Which books do I put into my morning time, and which books do I assign to my students? In this video, I'm sharing how I use Ambleside Online for our Charlotte Mason curriculum, and then how I handle all the different ages and stages, and how I pick which books and how we incorporate that into morning time. My name is Joy Cherrick, and welcome to my channel. I have 6 children and I'm expecting number 7. And on this channel, I do videos about Charlotte Mason homeschooling, nature study, and family life. All right, so step number 1 is to decide which AO, or Ambleside Online, year each of your students is going to be in next year, and who might be sharing a grade. So for me, if I have children in Form 1, which is grades 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, then I will just join them together, and they are just all going to be in that form. Or what, if we're going to be focusing on year 1, then I'll just, everybody, even if they're a 3rd grader, they'll all be doing that. And then I'm just kind of going through 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and then I loop back. So that Form 1 in my home is a continual loop. So in my home, because my students, my oldest 2, are very strong readers, I have it that once they are in 4th grade, they actually start taking on their own Ambleside Online year as far as books go. Now it does get tricky, and the reason it gets tricky is because I pull out books from the different years and put them in morning time. So some of my kids will get books at different times, and then they'll get to that year and then they've already read that book, or we just read it last year or whatever. But that's also wonderful, because then my students are kind of ahead in some ways, and so we can grab from other years. I do have one caveat. So my oldest child, a girl, can read every single book assigned in the AO years, and then she goes through the free reading, and then sometimes she even gets into the next year's free reads. So that is unusual. So I have had to customize for my son, my next born, who is just not, he's just not sitting around reading for hours and hours and hours. He's more active. He's really more interested in math. So I have found, I've needed to temper that based on his aptitude. And he's also just a lot slower to do, to eat, to read, to write, whatever. He's more methodical and intentional, whereas she is faster and gets things done more quickly. So because of that, I've had to look at the AO year, like this year 4, he did not do it strict. I pulled some books from AO year 4 for him to read, but then I also grabbed some things based on his interests. He was really into the Iliad and kind of that time period. So I was able to find some really great historic fiction books at his level that a friend of mine had, and we just borrowed several of those to fill in. So he, instead of getting whatever the year 4 time period was, he was probably a little bit more on Greek and Roman history than he was on the kind of early American stuff. So I just go, well, it is what it is, and each child is born a person, and I want to be cultivating some of those interests. And what do I care if it's Roman history instead of American history when he's in 4th grade? He's going to get that next year as well. So step 2 is to figure out whose book selections need to happen where. So I basically just get my lists for who needs what, and then I look at what books I want to read, and I pull those, and if they're appropriate, and I move those into morning time. And I will link to my morning time checklist it's like my outline that I use for myself. And I basically have a little, and I'll throw it up here on the screen. I have an outline and I have all the different subjects that I want to make sure that I'm getting a history, an American history. I want to make sure I have biographies, a natural history or science type living book that we're reading through. I forget some of the other ones. But that kind of allows me to know, okay, well, this is the type of book I'm going to be reading throughout the week. And I select 8 books. And sometimes one book will take us all year, and sometimes it'll just take us a term. But what I tend to do is, if we're in a term and that book is assigned for that term instead of the whole year, if I finish it early, then we just do some of the other books a little bit more for that term. I don't add another book in. I just let it allow that to give us margin for that week. Okay, the next thing, step 3 that I do for our morning time plans and for just getting our Ambleside years kind of all squared away with all the ages and stages, is after I've got the book selections figured out, then I can focus on our memory binders. And our memory binders, I've got a video that I go through these. Where's the tab? Here. So I have these various tabs, and most of it stays the same each year. So we've got our prayers section, we've got our poems section, we've got our scripture section, math, which is just skip counting. It's just lists of numbers. And then we have our folk song section. So what I really just need to do each year is get my poems, my scripture, and my folk songs all set up. And I select the poems and the scripture, and I just use the Ambleside Online folk songs and hymns selection, unless I have a different preference, then I slip that in for that. But I have a document that I just fill out for each child, and then I go through the books Harp and Laurel Wreath. I go through Cindy Rollins' book Morning Time Handbook, and actually she just told me that they are getting ready to release a new version of that. So I'm really excited to get my hands on that. And then I figure out what scriptures as a family we're going to memorize for the year. And for scriptures, I like to do longer passages. So I do 1 per term. So 3 different long passages per term. Unless I do a short one, then I'll do 2. But we're going to do Exodus 20, the 10 Commandments. So I'm going to let that take us 12 weeks. So, then with the scriptures, the poems, I break it into half terms. So 6 weeks. So we get term 1, the first session, we'll do 1 poem. And then the next session, we'll do another poem. But each child, sometimes the older ones, they have different preferences, and they have different, a girl and a boy. And so I give them different poems to memorize based on what I think they would enjoy. So my daughter is going to be picking out her own Shakespeare passage that she wants to memorize because she really enjoys the theatrics. But my son, he likes things that have more to do with war and bows and arrows and swords and all of that. So see, it just doesn't work. You can't just all do flowers. And then my younger 2, I've been going through just kind of my old list and going, okay, well, they haven't done these yet. And I really love some of these poems that we had already selected. A lot of them are from the Harp and Laurel Wreath book. And some of them are also from the Andrew Pudewa book. It's got that really long title. It's Linguistic Development Through Poetry Memorization. The level 1 is lovely. The level 2 also it's just so, they're so great. But what's funny is, I mean, he's not original either. I find all of these poems and all the poetry children's books that we have laying around. So, but his is a really good compilation for, stuff to memorize for the little ones. So that's it. I mean, it's just very basic, very simple. Trying to get our books in order for independent, and then I can pull those for the morning time selections for next year. And I actually haven't even done my morning time selections for next year because I'm still getting, all of the other things in order. But I'm almost done with everybody's book selections. So then I like to just lay them all on the bed in their different piles, and I section them into the different terms, and then lay them out that way, and then pull my morning time selections from that pile, and then I can have their terms already set up. I actually put them like in my husband's office in a stack with the term just handwritten on them, so that I just have them all ready to go. So that's how I get our plans together. That's how I select our books. And please let me know if you have more questions or if it was as clear as mud. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.